The prospect of a Bay Area precedent,
Bay Area Democrats seem to have their presidential contender.
She's a prosecutor, a former prosecutor, hell of a prosecutor, who's running against a guy who's a felon 34 times.
The VP pick, not so clear. And what does Silicon Valley think about a potential Trump-Harris face-off?
This is CBS News Bay Area with Elizabeth Cook.
$81 million and counting. That's how much the presidential campaign for Vice President Kamala Harris raked in ever since President Biden ended his bid for re-election. Her challenge now is to unite Democrats to get a Bay Area woman at the top of the ticket. So today we're asking about potential running mates and how Republicans are pivoting their political attacks. Well, President Joe Biden just called into a campaign staff meeting, promising he will be out on the road for Kamala Harris. He says the mission hasn't changed since he bowed out of the race. We also heard today from Vice President Harris. Take a listen.
Joe Biden's legacy of accomplishment over the past 3 years is unmatched in modern history. In one term, he has already surpassed the legacy of most presidents who have served 2 terms in office. His honesty, his integrity, his commitment to his faith and his family, his big heart, and his love, deep love of our country. And I am firsthand witness that every day our President Joe Biden fights for the American people, and we are deeply, deeply grateful for his service to our nation.
Kamala Harris is inheriting Biden's campaign team and met with staff members in Delaware this afternoon. Meanwhile, Bay Area Democrats wasted no time throwing their support behind Harris for president. And Makovic has a look at who is endorsing her candidacy so far. And
yeah, Harris just got the nod of approval from one of the biggest names in Bay Area politics, former Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The two spent years working side by side representing California on Capitol Hill. Pelosi had originally said she favored an open process to replace Biden, but today she sent out a statement saying that her enthusiastic support for Harris is official, personal, and political. She said Harris is brilliantly astute. And I just spoke about her endorsement with CBS News congressional correspondent Scott McFarland.
That was, from our perspective, the endorsement of the past 24 hours that seemed to put to rest the likelihood of anybody else getting in this race. Nancy Pelosi remains such a kingmaker here.
Of course, the president endorsed Harris almost immediately after stepping out of the race yesterday, and a growing list of Democrats has since followed suit, including Governor Newsom and the Clintons. A grassroots effort is taking shape here in the Bay Area to get Harris elected. Democrats saying they're ready to make calls and knock on doors to let voters know about someone who has mentored and supported them for decades.
Some of the stories you may not know is how when Barack Obama announced his presidency in Springfield, Illinois in 2007, it was cold. It was like 10-degree cold. And I got a chance to attend that announcement with no other than Kamala Harris. And the great news about that is from that point forward, I could see that this woman had potential because the way that we got in there to say hi to him was her.
26 years ago, I was a new assistant DA. I was told if I wanted to learn how to be a prosecutor, I needed to go watch the closing argument of a prosecutor whose name was hard to pronounce. And I gotta tell you, what I'm wearing today is the founder of the first Asians for Kamala organization. I have a t-shirt on that is 21 years old that says that Asians for Kamala.
You know, I'm ready to be shipped off to the Atlanta suburbs. I'm ready to go to Pennsylvania and knock on every door necessary to get Kamala Harris elected.
Well, Harris grew up in Oakland. She served as the DA for Alameda and San Francisco counties and the Attorney General of California. And she was elected to the U.S. Senate before becoming the first woman and African-American and South Asian ever elected vice president. Of course, she's not going to be the official Democratic nominee until the convention in Chicago starting August 19th. And she needs Joe Biden's delegates behind her. An AP survey of those delegates finds that Harris is consolidating support. Our political expert, Sonoma State professor David McEwen, says it's all but a done deal.
This is really a push that is strong. It seems inevitable, but it has to be an open process. And that open process means that it's laid out, it happens at the DNC. It's not a coronation, but it is something that begins the general election virtually today.
A Democratic political action group, Future Forward PAC, says it raised $150 million ever since President Biden took himself out of the running. Liz.
Ann, thanks so much. Well, a prominent Bay Area Democrat is suggesting that President Biden should even consider not finishing his term. San Francisco Mayor Willie Brown has known Harris for decades, even admitting that they dated back in the 90s. And Brown is suggesting one move Biden could make that he says would increase Harris's chances to win.
I would hope that he would understand that her chances go up if he would, at this moment, say, not only am I no longer the candidate, I'm no longer the president, and she is.
Joe will not resign. He will finish his presidency in a very dignified and honorable way.
Well, that's Attorney Joe Kotchett. He is a longtime friend and supporter of President Biden and has known him for almost 50 years. Kotchett says he also supports Harris based on her experience.
She's a prosecutor, a former prosecutor, hell of a prosecutor, who's running against a guy who's a felon 34 times.
California Republicans are also speaking out on Kamala Harris's endorsement. We spoke to Harmeet Dillon from the California Republican Party, and she called Kamala Harris unappealing.
I think if I'm a Democrat governor, Senate candidate, representative for Congress in a close race, I'm panicked by this choice because I think Kamala Harris has actually got negative coattails. And she's Biden, effectively, and the country wants something else right now. That's what the polls are showing. That's what business leaders are showing. That's what Americans who are afraid for their safety, security, and their pocketbooks are all trending towards. So this doesn't really help them.
And former President Trump is weighing in on social media, claiming Democrats stole the nomination from Joe Biden after he won it in the primaries. His running mate, Senator J.D. Vance, hosted his first solo campaign event in his hometown of Middletown in the key battleground state of Ohio. He took aim at Harris and promised to fight for policies that lower the cost of groceries and housing.
I was told I was going to get to debate Kamala Harris, and now President Trump's going to get to debate her. I will fight every single day to restore an America that works for Americans. I will fight for policies that lower the costs of your groceries, lower the costs of your housing, make life more affordable, not less affordable as it has been under the Democrats.
Meanwhile, there's already talk of who could be Harris's running mate. CBS News chief election and campaign correspondent Robert Costa shared on social media. He talked to veteran Democrats, and they told him they hope Harris considers some names beyond politics, from retired military leaders to even business leaders. Joining me now is political analyst Mark Sandalow. Thank you so much for being here, sir. So what do you think about Kamala's running mate prospects? J.D. Vance was picked for his connection to white middle-class Americans. Will she need to pick someone similar who can ignite that voting bloc?
It would seem kind of obvious when you have a Bay Area woman of color, which would probably not be the first choice demographically for who Democrats want to put forward. But I mean, Kamala Harris has all sorts of campaign skills, can reach a crowd of Democrats, but it makes sense you'd want to complement that with obviously not J.D. Vance, but somebody who can appeal to, to Biden's voters, to Scranton Joe, to the lunch pail working class Democrats. You also have to remember that a lot of people don't know if Kamala Harris is up to the job. I love Willie Brown's idea of elevating her to the president immediately so that people can see that she has the gravitas. But in terms of vice presidential picks, that points towards maybe a governor maybe from a swing state. And that's why you hear these names over and over again, which most people haven't even heard of. Roy Cooper from North Carolina, Josh Shapiro from Pennsylvania, Andy Beshear from Kentucky. These are all very, very popular Democratic governors in states that, maybe not Kentucky, but the others, that could go Democratic. And at least demographically, it balances the ticket in a way. I've heard some outside the box possibilities. People always throw Oprah out there. Anytime we're talking about Democratic politicians, I don't think Oprah is going to do this. But you do have some military leaders. You've got this guy, Admiral McCraven, who led the attack against Osama bin Laden.
Mark, I'm going to have to cut you off there just for a second there. I'm sorry to cut this interview short, but Kamala Harris is actually speaking live to her supporters. Let's go.
Love to hear it.
And when Congress passes a law to restore reproductive freedoms, as President of the United States, I will sign it into law. Indeed, we the people. So ultimately, to all the friends here, I say, in this election, we know we each face a question: what kind of country do we want to live in? A country of freedom, compassion, and rule of law? Yes! Or a country of chaos, fear, and hate? No. You all are here because you as leaders know we each, including our neighbors and our friends and our family, we each as Americans have the power to answer that question. That's the beauty of it, the power of the people. We each have the ability to answer that question. So in the next 106 days, we have work to do. We have doors to knock on. We have people to talk to. We have phone calls to make. And we have an election to win. So are you ready to get to work? Do we believe in freedom? Do we believe in opportunity? Do we believe in the promise of America? And are we willing to fight for it? And when we fight, we win. God bless you all, and God bless the United States of America and Joe Biden.
Vice President Kamala Harris addressing her supporters as she begins her official run for president there. Mark Sandalo, our political analyst, standing by. Mark, it's only been about 24 hours since Joe Biden made his announcement that he would be stepping down from the ticket. What do you make of the reaction from both parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, on this historic announcement? There really isn't any kind of precedent for this. This has never happened before in this manner.
Right. I mean, the closest you have to do is go back about, half a century to Lyndon Johnson, who dropped out and let his vice president, Hubert Humphrey, run. But that was late in the process. Right. But that was in March. I mean, that was not weeks before the convention. Watching her speak just now, she's got an issue. I mean, she has her speaking delivery, for those who are not going to be natural supporters, comes across as flighty, as sort of very, very happy, but not serious. Obviously, this is a very, very accomplished, serious woman. I mean, she was a district attorney in San Francisco, and then for the state, and a U.S. senator. She needs to project that. And just going back for a moment to what Willie Brown had to say, that's why resigning the presidency, which is not going to happen at this point, but something to give her the chance to have that gravitas, the East Room press conferences, the photo ops. She has to project somehow that she's able to be commander in chief. And I'm reminded as I watch that clip of her right just now, how delightful she can be as a human being. But for most Americans to take her seriously as a commander in chief, she needs to project authority, and she's going to have to work on that.
All right, Mark Sandalo, thank you so much. Well, a lot of tech titans in Silicon Valley threw their support behind former President Trump. So would Kamala Harris... Berkeley professor joins us next with some insight on all that. Stay with me.
I'm excited for Kamala. I'm sad for Biden. I think he, did a great job. He, gave 5 decades of his life.
Rooting for Kamala in terms of the opportunity to have a first female president.
It will give some incentive to the general population, but also especially to the women of the country, to come out in favor of her over Trump.
Now, support for Kamala Harris is also coming in from Bay Area leaders on social media. That includes Oakland Mayor Sheng Tao and congressional candidate and former San Jose Mayor Sam Liccardo. Joining me now is Professor Olaf Groth from UC Berkeley to give us some insight on Silicon Valley support. Very interesting dynamic. Kamala Harris, obviously from here, has history here in the Bay Area, but J.D. Vance was a venture capitalist in Silicon Valley. So who do you think wins Silicon Valley's support there?
Always happy to be here, Liz. So look, let's be clear. Silicon Valley is by and large Democratic. Some 70+% of elected officials are of the Democratic Party. So I think in terms of the pure electorate count, it's a Democratic win. But when it comes to the capital elite, so the stratosphere of venture capitalists, people with big money, we're talking in excess of $100 million, and the billionaires, then it's more of an even picture. And so those people are now, I think, to some degree, looking at Trump and Vance for various reasons. There are others on the Democratic side, like Eric Schmidt and Mark Benioff, founder of Salesforce, that are on the Democratic side as well, of course, but it's more of an even picture there, I think.
So talk a little bit more about that support for the Trump campaign from these uber-rich billionaires in Silicon Valley. Is it just about the money? Is it just about the tax breaks? Or is there something deeper going on? Is it about the antitrust? A lot of people view the Biden-Harris campaign as being very anti-startup, very not favorable to those antitrust lawsuits. So what do you think it's more about?
I think it's about three things fundamentally. One is, of course, the money, right? So the proposed tax on not yet realized capital gains, that's a big problem for Silicon Valley venture capitalists and the startups that they fund. So yes, money, of course, billionaires want administrations to do good things for them. And so money is a big issue. That, I think, is number one. Number two is regulation for new technologies that are disruptive, that are breakthrough, such as AI or, for instance, crypto. We've seen Mark Andreessen, Ben Horowitz come through for Trump Vance for that very reason, or at least that's one of the pronounced reasons there. So the current administration has been perceived as being overbearing on things like crypto and will likely do more on things like data ownership, AI privacy, et cetera. And then the third reason is that a lot of these billionaires, to the degree that they're on the libertarian side, actually think America is not yet merit-based enough and that they want a redesign of America, a reinvention of America. And so they're looking toward Trump Vance to essentially tear down what we have and then let them rebuild jointly.
One last question real quick. Do you think, President Biden, there are a lot of folks in Silicon Valley not in favor of another President Biden term. Do you think Kamala can win back those voters?
I think Kamala can win young voters, especially Hispanic and black voters. But I think Silicon Valley is idealistic and it is DEI focused. And so I think they're going to come out for her, yes.
All right. Professor Olaf Groth,
always
thank
a pleasure.
You so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So what's up with all those memes of coconut trees? Have you seen those coming up? How they're become a symbol of support for Kamala Harris. Stay with me. Well, Vice President Kamala Harris's bid for president has sparked much conversation online, including a new wave of memes of the vice president, in particular, one about a coconut tree. In fact, just yesterday, Democratic U.S. Senator Brian Schatz posting a photo of him climbing a coconut tree to the platform formerly known as Twitter. He says, "Madam Vice President, we are ready to help." Now, this reference dates back to May of 2023, where Harris spoke at a swearing-in ceremony of commissioners for an initiative focused on expanding educational opportunities for Hispanic and Latino Americans. In that speech, Harris repeated an anecdote her mother told her about the difference between equality and equity. She said her mother would tell her, quote, "I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree." The now viral soundbite sparked plenty of jokes and references online and is seeing a resurgence as Harris takes the spotlight in this election cycle. We'll be right back.